I remember the way the sun hit the playground, casting long shadows and turning the grass into a canvas of gold. It was the kind of day that should have been filled with the laughter of children, the smell of freshly cut grass, and the soft hum of contentment. But there I was standing on the sidelines of my son's school event, my smirk a shield against the chaos brewing inside me. I had planned this day meticulously, with the precision of a general strategizing for battle. My new husband Frank stood beside me, his arm possessively draped around my waist. I could feel his confidence seeping into me, his smug satisfaction at what we were about to do. We had come here to show my ex-husband Jack just how much better off I was without him, how I had moved on, upgraded even, while he languished in the shadow of our past. Jack had always been the steady one, the rock upon which our family was supposedly built. But beneath that facade was a man who couldn't keep up with my dreams, my ambitions. I had grown tired of the monotony, the predictability of our life together. So, I sought excitement, validation, and I found it with Frank. As the school bell rang, children scattered from the building like a burst of colorful confetti. Among them was our son, Tommy, his eyes scanning the crowd, searching for that familiar face. When his gaze landed on us, his expression was a mix of confusion and joy. He ran towards us, his little legs pumping with excitement. "Mommy! Daddy!" he called, not yet realizing the storm his greeting would stir. Jack appeared from the crowd, his face etched with the wear of single fatherhood. His eyes, once warm and loving, now held a guarded look as they fell upon us. I had to admit, even in his worn jeans and a faded shirt, Jack carried an air of dignity, a stark contrast to Frank's polished exterior. "Jack," I said, my voice dripping with feigned sweetness, "I wanted you to meet Frank, my new husband." The words were like daggers, each syllable sharpened to cut. Jack's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking to Frank before returning to me. There was a moment of silence, heavy with unspoken words, before Frank extended his hand, his grip firm, almost challenging. "Nice to finally meet you, Jack," Frank said, his voice smooth, confident. Jack took his hand, the shake brief, the tension palpable. I watched him, waiting for the crack in his composure, the sign that I had finally gotten to him. And then it came, not in anger or defeat, but in a quiet, almost resigned acceptance. "Tommy's been looking forward to seeing you both," Jack said, his voice steady, though I could see the pain behind his eyes. But then, something unexpected happened. As Tommy ran up to us, his laughter a balm to the tension, Jack's gaze shifted past us, towards the school's entrance. My heart skipped a beat, because what I saw next was not part of my plan, not something I had anticipated. There, walking towards us, was a woman, her beauty understated but striking, her smile genuine as she approached Jack. She was holding hands with another child, a little girl with Jack's eyes. I felt my smirk falter as realization dawned. My ex-husband had moved on too, but in a way I hadn't imagined. As this new reality unfolded before me, I could feel the smugness drain from my face, replaced by a chilling dread. Frank's arm around me tightened, sensing the shift, but it was too late. The smiles of victory on our faces turned to tears of shock, and something akin to loss as we watched what Jack had built in our absence. The story of our ambush was just beginning, and the first chapter ended with the heartbreaking sight of Jack's new family, a sight we hadn't anticipated, one that would change everything. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers, the irony not lost on me as this scene was unfolding like petals being torn from a rose. My heart was pounding, not from triumph but from an overwhelming sense of dread. The woman walking towards us, her hand interlocked with a child who bore an uncanny resemblance to Jack, was a curveball I hadn't seen coming. "Jack, who is this?" My voice came out more shrill than I intended, the control I usually maintained slipping through my fingers like sand. Jack's gaze met mine, not with the defeat I had anticipated but with a calm resolve. "Sarah, this is Emily. And this," he gestured to the little girl, "is our daughter Lily." The world seemed to tilt. "Our daughter?" The words echoed in my mind, a cacophony of betrayal and disbelief. I had left Jack for what I thought was a better life, only to find out he had moved on in ways I couldn't fathom. Emily, with her gentle smile and eyes that held stories I wasn't part of, was a stark reminder of the life I had discarded. Frank's hand on my waist was a vice now, his own shock barely concealed behind a mask of civility. Well, Jack, you've been busy, he managed, his voice an attempt at humor that fell flat. Tommy, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents, was already playing with Lily, their laughter a painful contrast to the adult's silent war. I watched them, my heart aching in ways I hadn't expected. This was supposed to be my moment of victory, not this revelation that my former life had not just continued without me but had flourished. Emily spoke, her voice soft yet firm. I've heard a lot about you, Sarah. It's nice to finally meet you. The politeness of her words was like salt in the wound. I couldn't find my voice, couldn't muster the feigned nicety that was expected. We should all go get some ice cream, celebrate the end of the school year, Jack suggested, his tone conciliatory, but I could see the subtle challenge in his eyes. He was showing me, not telling, that he had healed, that he had found joy beyond our broken marriage. The walk to the ice cream parlor was tense, each step a reminder of how my plan had backfired. Frank tried to make small talk, but his words were hollow, his usual bravado diminished. I was lost in thought, my mind racing with scenarios, with what-ifs and maybes. At the parlor we sat at a round table, the children between us, their innocence a barrier to the adult complexities. As we ordered, I stole glances at Emily, at Lily, trying to piece together this new puzzle that was my ex-husband's life. Lily, with her father's eyes, looked at me with curiosity, not judgment, and it twisted something inside me. Here was a child I knew nothing about, a sibling to my son, and yet she was a stranger. The conversation was light, forced, until Tommy, in his childlike honesty, asked, "Mommy, why are you crying?" I hadn't realized tears had escaped. I wiped them away quickly, my smile brittle. "Just happy tears, honey." I lied, my voice breaking. The rest of the time passed in a blur, the sweetness of the ice cream turning bitter in my mouth. When we said our goodbyes, Emily's parting words were, "Maybe we can do this again sometime for the kids." I nodded, numb, the reality of Jack's new life sinking in. As we walked away, Frank's grip was less possessive, more comforting, perhaps realizing the depth of my turmoil. But as we left, I couldn't shake the image of Jack with his new family, the life I had thought I escaped from, now painted in colors I hadn't imagined. The smirk I had come with had been wiped away, leaving only the haunting realization that perhaps, in my quest for more, I had lost something irreplaceable. The drive back from the school was silent, the only sound the hum of the car's engine and the occasional sniffle from me that I tried to mask. Frank, who was usually so full of words, seemed to have run out of them, his hands gripping the steering wheel with a tension that mirrored my own inner turmoil. As we pulled into our driveway, the facade of our perfect life seemed to mock me. The house was a testament to what I had gained, but now all I could see was what I had lost. Frank killed the engine, and for a moment we just sat there, the silence between us more profound than any conversation could be. Finally Frank spoke, his voice low. "Sarah, I had no idea." I cut him off, not wanting to delve into the raw wound that was still bleeding. "Can we just go inside?" My voice was hoarse, my emotions a tangled mess. Once inside, I retreated to the sanctuary of our bedroom, the room that was supposed to be a haven from the world. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the wedding photo on our dresser. There was Frank, all charm and confidence, and me with a smile that now looked so hollow. And then there was Jack in the back of my mind with a new family, a new life. Frank followed me in, sitting beside me but not touching, sensing perhaps that I was about to shatter. "Talk to me, Sarah. What's going through your head?" I looked at him, really looked at him, trying to see past the veneer of our relationship. "I thought I had it all figured out, Frank. I left Jack because I wanted more, because I felt trapped. But today, seeing him happy with another family, it's like I've been living in a fantasy." He nodded, his face a study in concern. "You thought you were winning, but it turns out the game was never what you thought it was." I didn't expect him to move on like that. "A daughter, Frank. He has a daughter and I didn't even know." My voice cracked, the reality of my ignorance hitting me like a physical blow. Frank took my hand, his touch gentle, a stark contrast to the possessive hold he had earlier. "We've built something here, Sarah. We can't let one moment at a school event unravel it." But could we? Did I even want to? The image of Jack and Emily, of Tommy playing with Lily, was like a seed planted in my mind, growing roots of doubt about every choice I had made since leaving Jack. "I need some time, Frank. I need to think," I admitted, pulling my hand away from his. He nodded, understanding or perhaps just accepting that this was beyond his control. I'll be downstairs if you need me. Alone, I lay back on the bed, my mind racing. The life I had crafted with Frank seemed so superficial now, so devoid of the depth I had once shared with Jack. I recalled the early days with Jack, the laughter, the comfort, the genuine connection that, in the throes of ambition and dissatisfaction, I had traded for this. This what? This house, this man who was now a stranger in the face of my turmoil? I thought about Tommy, how he had looked at his half-sister, the innocence of children not yet tainted by the complexities of adult emotions. What had I done to him, to us, by walking away? Tears streamed down my face, the realization that perhaps my quest for more had only led to less. The smirk I had worn, the satisfaction of showing Jack what he had lost, had crumbled into dust, leaving me to face the stark, painful truth of my own actions. Lying there, I felt the weight of my choices, the echoes of a past I had shunned now calling out to me, questioning every step I had taken since. What was I to do now, with this new knowledge, this new pain? Could I find peace with what I had, or would I always be haunted by what I had left behind? The night stretched on, filled with the silence of a house that suddenly felt too big, too empty. I lay in bed, the darkness mirroring the turmoil in my soul, while Frank's presence downstairs was a reminder of the life I had chosen. But now every choice seemed to question me back, demanding answers I didn't have. I couldn't sleep. The images of the day replayed in my mind like a cruel slideshow. Jack's new family, the innocence of Tommy and Lily, and Emily's serene smile. All of it was a tapestry of what my life could have been, had I chosen differently. By dawn, I was no closer to peace. I got up, my movements mechanical, and made my way downstairs. Frank was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, his eyes betraying a night of little sleep. "Morning," he said, his voice cautious, as if afraid to shatter the fragile peace between us. I nodded, pouring myself a coffee, the hot liquid offering small comfort. "I need to see Tommy today," I said, more to myself than to Frank, needing to anchor myself with something familiar, something real. "Of course," Frank replied, his tone supportive but with an edge of something else, worry perhaps. "Do you want me to come with you?" I shook my head. "I think I need to do this alone." He nodded, accepting my need for solitude. But as I prepared to leave, he caught my arm gently. "Sarah, whatever you're going through, we can get through it together. Remember that." His words were meant to reassure, but they only highlighted the chasm between what I wanted and what I had. I gave him a weak smile and left, the door closing with a finality that echoed my inner conflict. Driving to Jack's house, where Tommy was for the weekend, felt like navigating through a fog of my own making. When I arrived, the house looked the same, yet everything felt different. Jack opened the door, his expression one of concern rather than the guarded hostility I might have expected. "Sarah, come in," he said, stepping aside. The house was warm, filled with the sounds of children playing. Tommy ran to me, his embrace a balm to my aching heart. "Mommy!" he exclaimed, and for a moment the world felt right again. In the living room, Emily greeted me with a polite nod, her demeanor welcoming but reserved. Lily peeked from behind her, curious about this new visitor. "Tommy, why don't you show Lily your new toy?" Jack suggested, giving us adults a moment to talk. Once the kids were out of earshot, the air thickened with unspoken words. "I didn't know, Jack," I started, my voice barely above a whisper. "About Lily." He sat down, his posture relaxed but his eyes intense. "I would have told you, Sarah, but after everything, I thought it best to give you space. And honestly, I wanted to protect Lily from the complications." I felt the sting of that, knowing I was part of those complications. "She's beautiful," I said, meaning it, feeling a pang of regret for the years, the moments I had missed. "Thank you," Jack replied, his gaze softening. "But Sarah, why are you here?" "Really?" The question hung between us, heavy with implication. I saw you all yesterday and it just..." I struggled to find words, my emotions a tangled mess. I realized how much I've missed. How much Tommy might have missed. Jack sighed, looking towards where the sound of children's laughter was coming from. "We've all missed things, Sarah. But we're trying to make the best of what we have now." The truth in his words was like a knife, cutting through the facade I had built. "I'm sorry, Jack. For everything. For leaving, for not seeing what was right in front of me. He looked at me, really looked, his eyes searching mine for sincerity. I forgive you, Sarah. But you need to figure out what you want. Not just for you but for Tommy, for us as co-parents. He deserves that. I nodded, tears threatening again, but this time they were tears of acknowledgement, of the beginning of healing. I know. I need to find my way back to that. The conversation turned lighter after that, but the weight of what had been said lingered. As I left, I felt the threads of our past unraveling, but perhaps, just maybe, there was a chance to weave something new, something better from the remnants of what we once were. The drive back home was a journey through a landscape of my own making, where every mile seemed to stretch the distance between who I was and who I wanted to be. The confrontation with Jack, the sight of his new life, it had all left me with a heart heavy with regret but also with a spark of something else. A desire to make amends, not just for Tommy's sake but for mine too. When I returned, Frank was waiting, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. He didn't rush to question me. Instead, he let me come to him, offering a silent space where words weren't necessary. I sank into the couch, the weight of the day finally catching up. How was it? Frank finally asked, his voice gentle, his eyes searching mine for an answer. It was hard, I confessed, feeling the sting of tears again. Seeing Jack with his new family, it made me realize so much. Frank sat beside me, taking my hand. Realize what? How much I've missed. How much I've lost in chasing after. What? A better life? But at what cost? My voice broke, the reality of my choices laid bare. He squeezed my hand, his support palpable but his words cautious. Sarah, we've built something here too. It's not all for nothing. I shook my head, not in disagreement but in the acknowledgement of a complex truth. I know, Frank. But seeing Tommy with his sister, with Jack and Emily, it's like I've been living in a shadow of what could have been. The silence that followed was filled with the ticking of the clock, each second a reminder of time passing, of opportunities lost or yet to be seized. Frank finally spoke, his voice firm but kind. What do you want, Sarah? What do you really want? That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? I had left Jack for more, for something I thought would fill the void I felt, but here I was, more hollow than ever. I don't know anymore, Frank. But I know I can't keep going like this, pretending everything is fine when it's not. He looked away for a moment, then back at me, his eyes clear. I love you, Sarah. I want you to be happy. But if that means we need to take a step back, figure out what's best for us, for you, then we'll do that. His words were a lifeline, yet they also felt like a goodbye. I need to think, Frank. I need to understand what I've done, what I want to do now. Not just for me but for Tommy. He nodded, understanding or perhaps accepting the inevitability of change. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. That night I lay awake, the house silent around me, but my mind was loud with thoughts. I thought about the life I had with Jack, the laughter, the shared dreams before they turned into shared resentments. I thought about Frank, the excitement, the passion, but also the superficiality that had crept in when the novelty wore off. Then there was Tommy, innocent in all this, yet affected by every decision I made. What kind of example was I setting? What kind of stability was I providing? Sleep eluded me, and in the dark I made a decision. I would start by understanding myself, by seeing what I had turned away from in my quest for something better. I would talk to Jack more, not as adversaries but as co-parents, as people who once loved each other. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to mend what had been broken, not to go back but to move forward with integrity. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of regret and hope, I knew this was the beginning of a long journey. A journey where I might find peace, or at least, a new kind of understanding with the shadows of my past and the potential of my future. Part 6. The Crossroads of Heart and Mind. The morning light was unforgiving, casting sharp lines across the room, mirroring the clarity that had begun to dawn within me. I had spent the night wrestling with my thoughts, my heart, and now as the sun rose, I was ready to face what I needed to do. I called Jack, my voice steady but with an undertone of vulnerability. Can we meet? Just us to talk. There was a pause, a silence that spoke volumes before Jack agreed. Sure, Sarah. How about the park by the river? Neutral ground. I agreed, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. Neutral ground indeed, a place where neither of us held home court, where the past could be discussed without the weight of our former shared space. Frank was still asleep when I left, a note left on the kitchen counter, simple yet loaded. I need to sort things out. I'll be back later. The park was quiet, the river's gentle flow a stark contrast to the storm inside me. Jack was already there, sitting on a bench, watching the water as if it held answers. I approached, my steps hesitant, and sat beside him, keeping a respectful distance. "Thanks for coming," I started, my voice betraying my nerves. Jack turned to look at me, his eyes kind but guarded. "We need to talk, Sarah. For Tommy's sake, if nothing else." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot since yesterday. About us, about Tommy, about how I've handled everything." He listened, his gaze steady on me, encouraging me to continue. "I left because I felt trapped, Jack. I wanted more, something different. But seeing you, with Emily, with Lily, I've realized that I might have thrown away something precious for something that isn't what I thought it was." Jack sighed, looking back at the river. "I won't lie, Sarah. It hurt when you left. But I've moved on, not just for me but for Tommy. He's happy, and that's what matters to me. I don't want to disrupt that, Jack. I need to understand how we can make this better for him. For all of us." He turned to me, the compassion in his eyes a balm to my guilt. "We can start by being honest, by communicating. Not just about custody or school events, but about our lives. Tommy deserves to know his family, all of it." I felt the weight of my actions, the ripple effect they had caused. I want that too. I want him to have a stable, loving environment. Even if it means stepping back from some things. Jack considered this, his silence thoughtful. "We can do that. Maybe we can even expand our idea of family. For Tommy's sake." The idea was daunting but felt right. "And what about us, Jack? Can we be friends? Or at least not enemies?" He chuckled softly, a sound that once used to fill our home with warmth. "We were never enemies, Sarah. We were just lost. Maybe we can find a new way to be there for each other, for Tommy." The conversation flowed then, easier than I expected, about schedules, about how we could include both families in Tommy's life without confusion or conflict. We spoke of past mistakes, of apologies, and of moving forward not with the intent to rekindle what was lost, but to build something new, something different. As we parted, I felt a burden lift, not entirely but enough to see a path forward. I walked back to my car, the river behind me a symbol of the constant flow of life, of change. When I returned home, Frank was up, the note in his hand. His expression was one of uncertainty, of waiting for the other shoe to drop. I approached him, my resolve clear. "I met with Jack," I said simply. "We talked about co-parenting, about being better for Tommy." Frank nodded, his face a mask of emotions he was trying to control. "And us, Sarah? Where do we stand?" I looked at him, seeing not just the man I had chosen but the man who had stood by me. "I need to figure out who I am, Frank. What I want. I can't do that while pretending everything is fine when it's not." He took a deep breath, his eyes searching mine. "I'll support you, Sarah. Whatever you decide." The day ended not with closure but with the beginning, the start of untangling the mess I had made of my life. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while I felt I was moving in the right direction, even if I didn't know where that would lead. The days that followed were a blend of introspection and practical steps towards a new normal. I spent time with Tommy, trying to be more present, more aware of the impact of my actions on his young life. I also made time for myself, something I had neglected in the pursuit of what I thought was happiness. One evening, as I stood before the mirror in our bedroom, I studied my reflection, not just the physical appearance but the person staring back at me. The woman in the mirror had changed since she left Jack, since she married Frank. There were lines of worry, of experience, but also, I hoped, lines of wisdom. Frank entered the room, his presence now felt different, less like a partner in an adventure and more like a companion in a journey of understanding oneself. He stood behind me, not touching, just observing. "You look like you're thinking hard," he said, his voice gentle. "I am," I replied, turning to face him. "I'm trying to see who I've become, Frank. And I'm not sure I like what I see." He nodded, his expression one of empathy. "You've been through a lot. We both have. But you're trying to make things right. That counts for something." I appreciated his support, but the weight of my decisions was mine to bear. "I need to apologize to you too, Frank, for bringing you into a life that was built on the ruins of another." He shook his head. "Don't apologize for what we had, Sarah. It was real, even if it wasn't what you thought it would be. We've both learned something from this." His words were a comfort, but they also highlighted the need for change. "I'm thinking of seeing a therapist to sort through all this." to figure out what I really want. That's a good step, he said, his voice encouraging. I'm here for you, Sarah. But I also think it's important for you to find your own way, even if that means we need to redefine what we are to each other. The conversation was hard but necessary. We talked about giving each other space, about living more like roommates for now, focusing on our individual journeys while still supporting each other. It wasn't a breakup, not yet, but it was an acknowledgement that our relationship needed to evolve or possibly dissolve. Later that week, I met with Jack again, this time with Emily present. It was awkward at first, but Emily's warmth helped ease the tension. We discussed how to blend our families better for Tommy's sake, how to ensure he felt loved by all of us without confusion. Emily shared her perspective, which was surprisingly understanding. I know it's not easy, Sarah, but we all want what's best for Tommy. Maybe we can learn from each other, too. Her words struck a chord. Here was a woman I had viewed with suspicion, now offering me a chance at redemption and understanding. We agreed on regular family meetups, not just for Tommy but to foster a sense of extended family. As I left their home, I felt a mix of emotions. There was sadness for what I had lost, but also a burgeoning respect for the new dynamics we were creating. It wasn't the life I had envisioned, but maybe, just maybe, it could be something valuable in its own right. Back at home, I started looking for therapists, someone who could help me navigate through my tangled emotions. I also began journaling, writing down my thoughts, my fears, my hopes. It was therapeutic, a way to confront myself in black and white. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized that this journey was about more than just fixing relationships with others. It was about fixing my relationship with myself, about learning to trust my own heart again. It was about understanding that sometimes the path to happiness is not straight but a winding road where every turn teaches you something new about yourself. The weeks that followed were a deep dive into self-discovery, each therapy session peeling back layers of my past, my decisions, and my identity. My therapist, Dr. Ellis, had a way of asking questions that made me confront truths I had avoided. One session, we touched on my marriage to Frank. Why did you choose Frank, Sarah? Dr. Ellis asked, her voice probing yet gentle. I hesitated, the answer more complex than I had ever admitted. He was exciting. He made me feel alive when I felt like I was just existing with Jack. But I think now I see it was more about escaping than finding true happiness. She nodded, encouraging me to continue. And how does that realization make you feel now? Guilty, I confessed. Guilty for using Frank as an escape, for bringing him into a life where I wasn't fully present. Later, I shared this with Frank, who listened with a calm that spoke of his own journey through our relationship. I knew you were running from something, Sarah. Maybe I was too, in my own way. We both got caught up in the fantasy of each other. The conversation was cathartic, a mutual acknowledgement of our shared but misguided journey. We decided to continue living together but to start dating other people to see if we could find what we truly wanted or needed outside of each other. It was an unconventional arrangement, but it felt right for us at that moment. Meanwhile, my interactions with Jack and Emily were becoming more routine, more comfortable. We had our first family outing together, a picnic at the local park. Watching Tommy play with Lily, I felt a pang of what could have been, but also a sense of peace in what was becoming. During this outing, Emily pulled me aside. I know this isn't easy for you, Sarah, but I admire your strength in wanting to make things work for Tommy. Her words were a salve to my wounded pride. Thank you, Emily. I'm learning a lot about myself through all this. As autumn began to paint the leaves with its vibrant hues, I found myself at a crossroads. One day, after dropping Tommy back at Jack's, I sat in my car, watching them wave goodbye. The sight of them, a family emotion, made me reflect on my own path. I decided to delve deeper into my past with Jack. I visited places we had shared, not to relive the past but to understand it. The cafe where we had our first date, now under new management but still holding echoes of our laughter. The park where we had once dreamed of our future, now just a green space for others' dreams. Each visit was like turning the pages of an old book, seeing not just where the story went wrong but where it had been right. I realized I had loved Jack deeply, but I had also loved the version of myself I was with him, a version I had lost when I left. Back at home, I shared these revelations with Frank. I'm beginning to see why I left Frank, but also why I might have been wrong to do so in the way I did. He listened, his own journey evident in his eyes. We all make choices, Sarah. Sometimes they're the wrong ones, but they teach us something if we let them. That night, I wrote in my journal, not about regrets but about lessons. Lessons about love, about identity, about the pursuit of happiness. I wrote about how sometimes the pursuit itself can lead us astray if not guided by true self-awareness. As I closed my journal, I felt a shift within me. The weight of my truths was heavy, but carrying them was making me stronger, more authentic. I was beginning to understand that healing wasn't about going back but about moving forward with all the pieces of my past, learning to live with them, rather than in spite of them. With the arrival of winter, the world outside turned cold, but inside, within me, there was a thawing of sorts. My therapy sessions had provided clarity, and my relationship with Frank had transformed into one of mutual respect and understanding. We were no longer lovers in the traditional sense but companions on separate paths of self-discovery, sharing a home yet living our own lives. The holiday season approached, and with it came the challenge of navigating family traditions amidst our new dynamics. Jack had invited Frank and me to spend Christmas Eve with them, a gesture that spoke volumes about the progress we had made in our co-parenting journey. I was apprehensive but agreed, seeing it as an opportunity for Tommy to have a united family experience, albeit in an unconventional way. On Christmas Eve, we arrived at Jack and Emily's with gifts, the air thick with anticipation. Their home was warm, filled with the scent of pine and baking. Tommy's joy was palpable as he ran around, showing off his new toys to Lily. The awkwardness of the situation was diffused by Emily's gracious hosting. She had set up games for the kids, and for us adults, there was a sense of trying to forge new traditions. We played charades, a game that had us laughing in ways I hadn't in a long time. For a moment, the past didn't matter, we were just people enjoying the present. After the kids were tucked in, we adults sat around the fireplace, sharing stories, even some from the past, but with a focus on the funny or heartwarming moments rather than the painful ones. Frank shared tales from his childhood, and Jack recounted a humorous incident from when Tommy was learning to walk. During a quiet moment, Jack turned to me. "Sarah, I never thought we'd be here doing this. But I'm glad we are." "For Tommy." I nodded, the sincerity in his voice striking a chord. "Me too, Jack. It's not how I imagined it, but it feels right." Emily then spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. "We're all trying to make the best of what we have to give these kids a sense of family that's bigger than just two parents." Frank chimed in, "It's enlightening. Seeing how things can work when everyone decides to move forward together." The conversation moved to more personal reflections. I shared how therapy had been helping me, how I was learning to forgive myself, and how I was beginning to see Frank not just as a partner but as an individual with his own journey. Frank then surprised us by saying, "I've started seeing someone. It's new but it's good. It's helping me understand what I truly want." There was a moment of silence, not of tension but of acknowledgement. Jack clapped him on the back, a gesture of camaraderie. "Good for you, Frank. We all deserve to find what makes us happy." The night ended with us exchanging small, thoughtful gifts, not out of obligation but out of a newfound respect for each other. It was a Christmas Eve unlike any other, filled with moments of healing and understanding. Driving back home, I felt a lightness, a sense of having crossed a significant bridge. Frank and I talked about the evening, about how odd yet beautiful it was to share such moments with people we once thought were part of our past. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about the bonds that had formed, not seen or understood at first, but they're nonetheless. Bonds of co-parenting, of respect, and of shared history that was now being redefined into something supportive rather than divisive. The holidays had shown me that family wasn't just about blood or marriage, it was about the connections we chose to nurture, the moments we chose to share. And in that realization, there was a profound sense of peace, a beacon of hope for whatever lay ahead. The new year brought with it a fresh perspective, as if the calendar changing was a symbolic reset button for my life. Winter's grip on the world was loosening, and with it, my grip on old grudges and misgivings was also starting to thaw. I continued with therapy, delving deeper into understanding my patterns of behavior, my need for validation, and my fear of stagnation. Dr. Ellis had become not just a therapist but a guide in redefining my life's narrative. One session she asked, "What does renewal mean to you, Sarah?" The question lingered in the air, heavy with possibility. "Renewal," I started, "means letting go of who I was to become who I need to be. Not just for Tommy but for myself." As spring approached, I decided to take up gardening, a metaphor for growth and renewal. I turned a part of our backyard into a small garden, planting seeds that would, with care and time, blossom into something beautiful. It was therapeutic, watching life emerge from the soil, teaching me patience and the value of nurturing. Frank had been spending more time away, exploring his new relationship, which seemed to bring him a genuine sense of joy. We had settled into a rhythm that worked for both of us, sharing household responsibilities but also giving each other the space to grow individually. One evening, as I was working in the garden, Frank joined me, watching me plant new seedlings. "You seem at peace," he observed. I smiled, wiping dirt from my hands. I'm trying to be. It's not just about moving on, it's about growing. He nodded, understanding. I'm glad to see it. And I've been thinking, maybe it's time for me to find my own place. Not because I don't value what we've built here, but because I think we both need to fully embrace our new lives. The suggestion didn't sting as I thought it might. Instead, it felt like a natural progression. I think you're right, Frank. We've been through a lot together, but this feels like the right step for both of us. The conversation was bittersweet but filled with mutual respect. We agreed he would start looking for a place, ensuring that our separation would be amicable, focused on maintaining our friendship and co-parenting relationship with Tommy. With Frank's decision, I felt a mix of relief and contemplation. I started to redecorate the house, not to erase him from it, but to make it a space that reflected my journey. I hung new art, rearranged furniture, and even painted Tommy's room with murals of his favorite stories, giving him a sense of stability and love. My relationship with Jack and Emily continued to strengthen. We set up regular family dinners where the focus was always on the kids but also on fostering a sense of extended family. Emily had become someone I not only respected but also admired, seeing in her a model of grace and strength. One such dinner, Jack pulled me aside. I see a change in you, Sarah. You seem happier. I am, I admitted. It's been a hard road, but I'm learning to appreciate the journey. He smiled, a genuine expression of support. We're all on our journeys, but it's good to see you finding your way. As the flowers began to bloom in my garden, mirroring the growth within me, I felt ready to explore more of my own interests. I joined a local book club, started taking evening classes in photography, capturing life's moments through a lens, much like I was trying to do with my own life. This phase of renewal was about more than just moving on from past mistakes. It was about embracing new beginnings, about understanding that life is a series of chapters, each with its own lessons and beauty. I was learning to live not just for the moments of happiness but through the process of becoming who I was meant to be, with all the scars of the past as part of my story, not the end of it. Spring had fully arrived, bringing with it a flurry of new beginnings. Frank had found a new apartment, and the process of him moving out was handled with care, ensuring that Tommy felt secure and loved through the transition. We had agreed on shared custody, making sure Tommy's life was as disruption-free as possible. The day Frank moved his last box, there was a palpable sense of closure but also of opening new doors. We stood in what was now just my home, looking at each other with a mix of nostalgia and hope. This isn't an end, Sarah, Frank said, his voice steady. It's just a different kind of beginning for both of us. I know, I replied, feeling the truth in his words. Thank you, Frank, for everything. We hugged, a long, sincere embrace that spoke of our shared journey, of love that had transformed into something different but still valuable. With Frank gone, the house felt quiet at first, but I soon filled it with my own rhythms. My photography classes had sparked a passion I didn't know I had. I started capturing moments around the house, in the garden, and even at Tommy's school events, seeing the world through a lens of beauty and possibility. Tommy was adapting well, his resilience and joy a constant reminder of what was truly important. One evening, as we painted together in his newly muraled room, he looked up at me with his father's eyes. Mom, are you happier now? He asked, his innocence cutting through to the heart of my journey. I am, sweetheart. Sometimes happiness means changing things so we can grow. He nodded, seemingly understanding or at least accepting, before returning to his painting. My relationship with Jack and Emily continued to evolve into something genuinely cooperative and friendly. We had established a routine that worked well for all of us, ensuring Tommy felt the love and support of both his families. One sunny Saturday, we decided to take the kids to a local festival. The day was filled with laughter, cotton candy, and rides. Watching Tommy and Lily together, their bond growing stronger, I felt a profound sense of rightness. Jack and I had a moment alone as the kids ran ahead. It's good to see you like this, Sarah, he said, his tone reflective. I'm learning, Jack. Learning that happiness isn't always what we think it is at first glance. He nodded, his gaze thoughtful. We both had to learn that in our ways. The day ended with all of us watching a fireworks display, the colors reflecting in our eyes, a symbol of celebration and change. Emily sat beside me, her presence comforting, her friendship something I had grown to cherish. Back home, I reflected on the day, on how far we had all come. I sat at my desk, looking at the photos I had taken, each one telling a story of healing and growth. I decided to start a photography project, capturing moments of renewal and change, not just in my life but in others' lives as well. My therapy sessions with Dr. Ellis had shifted from focusing on past wounds to planning for future growth. You've come far, Sarah, she remarked in one session. What's next for you? I want to help others, I said without hesitation. Maybe through my photography, showing people that beauty and new beginnings can come from even the most unexpected places. She smiled encouraging. That sounds like a wonderful journey to embark on. That night, I felt a deep sense of peace. The echoes of my past decisions were still part of my story, but they were no longer the loudest sound. Instead, I was beginning to hear the quiet, persistent rhythm of understanding, of growth, and of a life where each moment was a step toward becoming more truly myself. As summer approached, my life began to resemble the gardens I tended, vibrant, in bloom, and ever-changing. My photography project, which I titled Renewal, was becoming a personal mission to capture the stories of transformation around me. I started showcasing my work at local galleries, sharing narratives of people who had turned their lives around, much like I had. One afternoon, while setting up my latest exhibit, I met Clara, a woman whose story of overcoming loss struck a chord with me. She had lost her husband in an accident but had found solace in community gardening. Her photo in my exhibit was of her hands, soil-stained, holding a newly sprouted plant. It was a powerful image of growth amid grief. "You've captured something special here," Clara said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "Thank you, Clara. Your story is part of what this exhibit is about. It's about seeing beauty in the process of healing." We talked for hours, forming a bond over shared experiences of finding new purpose after personal upheaval. Her encouragement and the stories from visitors at the exhibit fueled my passion further. Meanwhile, my relationship with Tommy was flourishing in this new phase of my life. We had our routines, our special times together, like our weekly adventure days where we explored local parks, museums, or simply went on nature walks. These moments were precious, grounding us both in the joy of the present. Frank was thriving in his new space, and we maintained a friendly co-parenting relationship. He even came to one of my exhibits, proud and supportive. "You've found your calling, Sarah," he said, genuinely happy for me. Summer also brought a new challenge. Jack and Emily announced they were expecting another child. The news was bittersweet for me. It was a reminder of the life I had left behind, but also a celebration of the new family we had all become part of. Tommy was ecstatic about the prospect of being a big brother again, and I found myself genuinely excited for them. We planned a small baby shower at their home, an event that felt like a testament to how far we'd come. During the shower, surrounded by friends and family, I felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. Emily, with her radiant pregnancy glow, pulled me aside. "Thank you for making this so special, Sarah, and for being here for all of us." "I wouldn't be anywhere else," I replied, my heart full. The event was a mosaic of laughter, shared stories, and the promise of new beginnings. As I watched Tommy play with Lily, teaching her how to blow bubbles, I realized how much my perception of family had changed. It wasn't just about blood or past ties, it was about the connections we built, the love we chose to give. Back at home, alone in the quiet of the evening, I sat down to journal. I wrote about the day, about how the concept of family had expanded in my life. I reflected on my journey, how each step, even the painful ones, had led me here, to this moment of harmony and self-discovery. My photography was not just a hobby anymore, it was becoming my way of speaking to the world, of sharing the beauty in life's transformations. Inspired by the day's events, I decided to expand my project, to include not just stories of personal renewal but of communal healing and growth. As I closed my journal, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. I was not just moving forward, I was helping others to see the beauty in their own journeys of renewal. Life, I realized, was not about erasing the past but about painting over it with new colors, new stories, and endless possibilities. Autumn's arrival painted the world in hues of gold and crimson, mirroring the transformation in my own life. My photography project, Renewal, had gained recognition, leading to invitations to speak at local community centers and even a small feature in a regional arts magazine. Each session was not just about showcasing my work but about inspiring others to see their own lives through a lens of potential and beauty. One crisp morning, I was invited to speak at a workshop for people dealing with life transitions. As I set up my presentation, I felt a sense of purpose, knowing I was about to share not just my photos but my journey. "I've learned," I began, addressing the room, "that life isn't about avoiding change but embracing it, finding the art in our transitions." After my talk, people approached with their stories, some seeking advice, others just wanting to share. Among them was a young woman named Maria, whose eyes held a familiar pain. She had recently lost her job and was struggling with her identity outside of her career. "Your photos," she said, her voice shaky, "they remind me that there's beauty in starting over." "That's exactly what they're meant to do," I replied, offering her a contact for local support groups I had found helpful. Back at home, Tommy was growing more independent, his school life expanding his world. One evening, while we were doing homework together, he asked, "Mom, do you ever think about what if you stayed with Dad?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I do, Tommy. But thinking about what if doesn't help us. What matters is what we do now, how we make our life beautiful together." He nodded, seemingly content with the answer, and returned to his work. His question, though, lingered in my mind, a reminder of how our choices shape our paths but do not define our entire journey. As the leaves continued to fall, I received an unexpected invitation from Jack and Emily for Thanksgiving. It was an invitation that symbolized our journey from past hurt to present harmony. We gathered around their table, a blend of old and new family members, including Frank, who had brought his new partner. The meal was filled with laughter, stories, and gratitude. Emily's new baby, a boy named Sam, was the center of attention, his little giggles the soundtrack to our feast. Watching Jack with his children, I felt a deep, peaceful acceptance of where life had taken us. After dinner, as we all helped clean up, Jack and I had a moment together. "You've really made something beautiful out of everything, Sarah," he said, his voice low. "So have you, Jack. We both have in our own ways." That night, back at my home, I felt the weight of the day of the progress we'd all made. I sat down to add to my renewal series, capturing the essence of Thanksgiving, not just the food or the gathering but the unspoken bonds that had formed and strengthened over time. The project was evolving into something more than I had anticipated. It was becoming a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, to the idea that even from the ashes of our past, we could cultivate a garden of new beginnings. As I prepared for bed, I looked out my window at the stars, thinking about the canvas of life. We were all just artists in our way, painting over our pasts with strokes of new experiences, colors of hope, and shades of acceptance. The art of moving forward was not just in the big moments but in the daily choices to see beauty where others might see only loss or change. That night, I slept with a sense of peace, knowing that every day was another brushstroke on the canvas of life, leading to a masterpiece of survival, love, and transformation. Winter's chill brought with it a time for introspection, the cold outside mirroring the deep thoughts within. My renewal project had now expanded into a book, with stories and photographs of individuals who had transformed their lives after significant changes or losses. The book was set to release, and the anticipation was both thrilling and daunting. I spent much of my time in the quiet of my study writing the foreword, reflecting on my journey, which was now intertwined with so many others. Each story in my book was a mirror to my own experiences, showing me different facets of resilience and growth. One snowy afternoon, as I was putting the final touches on my manuscript, Tommy burst in from school, his cheeks rosy from the cold. "Mom, my teacher said you're writing a book." "That's so cool." I smiled, pulling him close. "It's all about people starting over, just like we did, buddy." He hugged me tightly, his warmth a stark contrast to the winter outside. "I'm proud of you, Mom." His words were a balm, a reminder of why I had chosen this path. As he ran off to play, I thought about how our lives had become a testament to the idea that from every end, there's a new beginning. The book launch was held at a local cafe that had become a second home to me, a place where I often met with subjects for my project. The room was filled with friends, new and old, including Jack, Emily, and Frank, who had become part of this community of renewal. As I spoke at the launch, I shared not just the journey of the book but my personal journey. "This book," I said, holding up the first copy, "is about seeing past the shadows of our lives to find the light. It's about recognizing that every one of us is an artist of our own life, capable of painting over our darkest moments with new colors." After my speech, people came up to congratulate me, to share how the stories in the book resonated with them. Among them was Maria from the workshop, now volunteering at the same community center where she had sought help. "You've changed my perspective, Sarah," she said, her eyes bright with gratitude. The evening was a blend of celebration and reflection, but as the crowd thinned, I found myself in a quiet conversation with Jack by the fireplace. "Seeing you like this, Sarah," he started, his voice thoughtful. "It's like watching the person I knew come back, but stronger, more herself." I nodded, the compliment touching a deep part of me. "It's been a journey, Jack. For both of us. I'm glad we could share parts of it for Tommy's sake and for ours." He smiled, a genuine smile that spoke of peace. "We've created something good out of what could have been chaos." The night ended with me feeling a profound sense of achievement but also a poignant reminder of the shadows that had once loomed large in my life. As I walked home through the quiet, snow-covered streets, I pondered the duality of life, how from our darkest nights come our brightest days. In my journal, I wrote about the launch, about how each story in the book, including mine, was not just about overcoming but about understanding. Understanding that life isn't about erasing the past but about learning to live with it, to let it shape us into something better, something more aware. As I closed my journal, I felt the weight of the day of the journey, but it was a comforting weight. It was the weight of knowing that I had turned my life's canvas from one of mere survival to one of vibrant, meaningful existence. The shadows of my past were still there, but now they served as the backdrop that made the light of my present all the more brilliant. Part 15. The Unfinished Symphony. The winter's grip slowly loosened, giving way to the promise of spring, a season of new beginnings that seemed particularly poignant this year. My book Renewal was now in the hands of readers, its stories inspiring conversations and, in some cases, action. I was receiving messages, emails, and even letters from people touched by the narratives, sharing how it had spurred them to embrace their own transformations. Tommy was growing by leaps and bounds, both in height and in understanding. One evening, as we watched the snow melt away from our garden, he remarked, "It's like the garden gets a new start every year, just like us." His observation struck me, a simple truth from the mouth of a child. Exactly, Tommy. Life gives us chances to start anew, to grow. The success of the book had opened new doors for me. I was invited to speak at various events, not just locally but across the state. These opportunities were thrilling yet grounding, reminding me daily of the power of storytelling, of sharing one's truth to heal and inspire. One of these events was particularly meaningful. A retreat for women who had experienced significant life changes. Here I shared not just my story but the stories from my book, encouraging others to see their lives as a series of chapters, each one potentially beautiful if we chose to see it that way. During this retreat, I met Hannah, a woman who had recently ended a long-term relationship. Her story resonated with the echo of my past, but her eyes held a determination for a different future. After my talk, she approached me, her voice steady yet vulnerable. "Your book. It's like looking into a mirror, but a mirror showing me what I could be." "That's exactly what I hoped it would do," I replied, feeling a kinship with her. Back home, the house felt different, not just in its physical state but in its essence. It was no longer a place of escape or hiding. It had become a sanctuary of growth, of self-expression. I had started turning one of the rooms into a small studio for my photography and writing, a space where I could continue to capture and create stories of renewal. As spring fully bloomed, I received an invitation that felt like a full-circle moment. Jack and Emily were renewing their vows on their anniversary, and they wanted Tommy and me there. The ceremony was held in their backyard, transformed into a garden of celebration. I watched as they exchanged new vows, not just of love but of commitment to their evolving family, to the journey they would continue together. Tommy stood beside his father, proud and beaming, while Lily held flowers, her innocence a beautiful contrast to the depth of the ceremony. Afterward, as we mingled, Emily approached me, her eyes warm. "Thank you for being here, Sarah. For everything." I felt the sincerity in her words, the gratitude for the path we had all walked together. "Thank you for letting me be part of this beautiful moment." The day ended with laughter, shared stories, and a sense of closure mixed with new beginnings. As I drove home, I reflected on how life was like an unfinished symphony, each note, each pause, contributing to a larger, ever-evolving piece. In my studio, I began work on a new project, inspired by the day's events. I titled it The Symphony of Life, aiming to capture moments of transition, of joy, and of the quiet beauty in everyday life. Each photograph, each story would be a note in this symphony, a testament to the idea that life, in all its complexity, was a continuous composition. Sitting back, I looked at the photos I had taken that day, each one a testament to the journey of renewal, not just for me but for all of us. The book had been a chapter, but life was an ongoing story, one where every end was merely a prelude to another beginning. And as the night fell, I felt a profound peace, knowing that while my symphony was far from finished, each note played was a part of a melody that was uniquely mine, resonant with the lives of those around me, forever part of the universal song of human experience.